In this tutorial, we'll be looking at loading samples into the EXS24 to create our own drum instrument. Okay, let's go. We're going to start by cutting some drum samples up, which I've already mixed down from an original drum recording. So let's just have a listen to some of those. So I've got this crash. There we go, lovely. I've got a bass drum. And that's at 3 different velocities. I've got a hi-hat, again at 4 different velocities. And a snare drum. Again at a few different velocities. Ooh. And an ambient snare, which I might not include. It sounds alright actually. But again, that's 5 different hits. So. And this was all played just in a room on a kit after a session had finished. And a few different tom hits. Obviously didn't have enough time, but you can do this with hundreds of different samples. Cool, so we got a rack tom and a full tom there. Okay, so the first thing to do is to cut some of these samples up to make them a bit more manageable and to make sure the start points are on the transients. So I'm just going to strip silence these, and we can give that a massive release time. We can pretty much the entire sample, that'll be fine. And pre-attack time 0. Cool, so that's crash. And we'll do the same with the bass drum. This post-release time can come way down. You want to give it a bit of time to fade out. That looks good. 0 pre-attack time. Cool. And hi-hat. 0 again. And we can give that a bit more release time, I reckon. Cool. And then the snare. Ooh, bring the threshold down a bit so we can capture those smaller. Yeah, great. And the snare ambient. Cool, same again. So we just want to pick up on these softer hits here, which is why I adjusted the threshold. And the tom. Again, we can leave a lot at the end of these. There we go. And the last floor tom. Ooh. Okay. And post-release time again. We can give it a nice. A lot of post-release. So before we do anything else, we have to export these as their own individual files. And how we're going to do that is we're just going to go click on the file and go export, and then export as audio file, and then hopefully it'll say crash, blah, 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 blah. And we can go a 16-bit. You can obviously, if it's recorded in 24-bit, you can select 24-bit, just up the bit rate. And then we can leave overload protection only, that's fine. We don't have any plugin effects or anything like that. So we can save that as its own crash file. And for the bass drum, I'm going to try and do them all simultaneously. So we're going to see how this goes. And we're going to click on the channel. Then we're going to go to the audio window. And I'm going to see if I can, I think I can select save regions as. See if we can do this. 3 regions, whee! So let's keep them all the same for 1. Actually, that's the original, so we can leave that. Bit depth, I'm going to go 24-bit. WAV, that's fine, whatever. Add resulting file to audio project. No. And yeah, let's save it in bounces and save. And we'll do the same with the hi-hat. Save regions. Bit. Right, bounces. Snare. Save regions. Should be the same place, etc. Great. Save again. Save regions as 5 regions. Perfect. There we go. Toms. Great. And then Tom 2 finally. Right, so the next step is to start importing some of these files into the EXS24. So we're going to create a new instrument channel. Instruments, great. And get rid of these sends. I should just put an empty channel, but anyway. Right, and then we need to select the EXS24. And then we can go to this parameter here for edit. And once we're in here, it opens up a new window and we can select a number of different parameters here. And the first things first, we're going to go a new instrument. Okay, so it's created a new instrument for us. And now we can go to edit, zone, and we can go load multiple samples. And now, where we bounced our individual tracks, we have our samples. So let's start with the bass drum and let's select all 3 bass drum samples. So add those. Done. Fine. Now this is where it gets a bit more complicated. It's asking us what do we want to do after we've added these samples. Do we want it to auto map by reading the key root, which we don't have a key root on any of these files, so that's not worth it. Do you want to add them as drums, so a zone without a range root key from audio file, or contiguous zones, zone width of 1 and then starting at C1. So I'm going to suggest drums. Actually, for this example, I'm going to suggest contiguous zones, and we're just going to say the width of 1, start at C1, that's fine. And as you can see, we've got a parameter up here which is telling us a few things about the samples that we have just imported. So it's saying zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, so it's categorized them into different zones. You don't need to pay much attention to that. Not right this minute. It's telling us what files in what zone. So that's our bass drum. 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. And then we have this playback option here, which is quite important because it's going to adjust the pitch where we move this kick drum around. So we want to deselect this. We don't want it changing the pitch of our kick drum. And it can be a one shot, so it's just going to play once. If you take this off, it will play until you release the key on the keyboard or key controller that you're using. So we want to leave that on just one shot. And then what we can do is, for ease of use, we can go to our samples and we can say, okay, we'll leave that on C1, and then our bass drum 2, we can shift up on top of it, and our bass drum 3, we can shift on top of that. Okay, and remember to save. So we'll call this acoustic drums. And that's what our EXS24 instrument is going to be called. Sample instruments, that's fine. Save. Okay, so now we're ready to edit some of these parameters. Oops. Some of the parameters of this this bass drum, because at the moment they're all going to be playing at the same time, so we don't want that. We want them separated into individual files. Individual hits on an individual velocity. So from here we can go to View and we can go velocity range, which is probably the most important thing on this. So as you can see, it's got a velocity range and it says a high of 127 and a low of 0. So what I'm going to do, for ease of use, I'm just going to shift that across a bit, just so we know what we're dealing with. And we can say, for example, velocity range, right, so we're going to turn this on, and our first bass drum hit, I'm going to say I want it going from 0 to, let's say, 60. Yeah, let's try 60. Our second sample is going to go from 60 to, let's say, 110 perhaps. And then finally our last sample is going to go to 110 to 127. Now, we can save that. Save. So the whole point of adding that velocity range is so that we can play different samples at different velocities. So for example, you can see just quickly on the EXS24, we're now on our acoustic drums EXS instrument, which we're creating currently. So if I hit C1 on my controller keyboard, you can see if I press it nice and softly, it's triggering the first sample. If I press it a bit harder, it's getting the second sample. And if I press it really hard, it's actually getting the softer sounding sample. So what we need to do is we need to switch this around. So bass drum 3, we can add 0. So we can go 0 to 60 for that. And then this first sample can go 60 to 110, and then last but not least 110 to 127, and now save. Oops. And we should have a better sounding sample. And I'm tempted to swap those last two around as well, because that one sounds like, this bass drum 1 sounds like the highest velocity sample, so I'm going to stick that at 127 and trigger it from 110, and then do this one from 60 to 110. There we go. Cool. So we've loaded 3 samples in there. I might just turn them up a bit because they sound slightly quiet. And you can do this, I believe, from here. So you can equal out some of those samples at the same time. Okay, that last sample's a bit loud, but for the second, maybe 10. Okay, cool. So now we can name that group as kick or bass drum. Let's keep it simple. Bass drum, cool. So now what we'll do is we'll add another group. New group. Hey, group 3. We can call this snare. And into this group we're going to load some more multiple samples. So again, we'll just import these 5 waves. You know what, I might just have a quick listen to them. So 3 is the softest. 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. That's going to be the order. 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. All right, great. Ooh. So again, contiguous zones starting, and this time we're going to change this to D1. Okay. Oh, it's already changed to a new group. So forget the last adding that group, we can just call this snare, and then we can kill that group by going delete. Cool. So just give it a quick save. Right, remember we've got to take the pitch off, and we want to keep one shot on, that's fine. And velocity range is still here, so that's great. And you can see down on the actual kind of this like arrangement sample window, I don't know what it's called, you can see our 5 samples are down here, all one after the other. So we don't want that, we want them all on top of each other like the bass drum, and we want the velocity to be separated off as well. So 3 is going to be ours, 0 to, let's say, 2, 5, 1, 2. So 3, we're going to say 0 to, let's say somewhere around 55 maybe. 3, and then 4 can be 55 to 65 maybe. 3, 4, and then 5 can be 65 to 75 perhaps, and then 1 can be 75 to 110, and then finally 2, 110 to 127. So let's save. Right, okay, we can move each file from this parameter here, the key range, so we can say D1, and you can see it moving down D1 at the bottom of the screen there. It's probably easier to drag it, but I'll just show you as an example. D1, and D1. Oh, D sharp. Oh, come on. D1. Great. So let's save that, and then let's have a quick listen to that. You can see it selecting the different velocity samples from that. And there we have our kick and our snare, both aligned in the same EXS instrument. And if we close that, this instrument will now come up on our menu page, just above the factory settings. So I've finally finished loading all the samples into the EXS24 and created my acoustic drum instrument, and I've just programmed a little MIDI drum beat just to give you an idea of what it actually sounded like after I finished. So here we go. And there we go, that's how you load samples into the EXS24 to create a drum instrument within the EXS24. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the EXS24 and you understand a bit more about how the EXS24 works. Check out some other videos on my channel, and until next time.